Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is yet another thoughts on video. And this time around, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on three different foreign films. The films are going to be Cosy Dens, which is also known, I think, as Pelíšky. I might have butchered it. It's a Czech film. Terkel in Trouble, and another film called The Can. And before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on these films, though, I would like to give a special shout out to Radic for yet again requesting another series of reviews. And if there is another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal, my Patreon, or my Cash App. The links to all three are in the video description down below, and I will try to get your requests as soon as I possibly can. So the first film is Cosy Dens. It came out in 1999. It's also known as, I think, Pelíšky. I might have butchered it. I probably did. And this one was actually really good. I like this one quite a bit. I would even recommend this one. I would say this is probably the best Czech film that I've seen. This is honestly up there with some of the better English coming of age dramas or coming of age dramas that I've seen from other countries. Like, this is a really solid film. It's directed by Jan Herbacik, and I think he did a fantastic job directing this movie. This is a film that has a very kind of warm and cozy feel and vibe to it, and that's done by design to really put you in the position and really make you feel like you're a part of these different families that the film's story focuses on. Because the film primarily is a coming-of-age story dealing with all these different families and their different trials and tribulations and in some ways triumphs, set in the months from Christmas 1967 up to the Prague Spring in 1968. And it's all taking place in, I believe, Czechoslovakia. And you have a lot of these sequences that are very cozy and enclosed and kind of in tighter spaces, because of the fact that the film, for the most part, takes place in a very limited series of set pieces and settings, because it takes place primarily within one apartment complex. And so you get to see all these different families and their different lives and their different varying slices of their lives inside of their apartments, and they all seem to be packed pretty tightly together. So it's almost like this is one big extended family, even though not everybody who is here in this apartment complex is actually related by blood. And the director easily could have done something that just made a lot of these sequences kind of run together, visually appear to be kind of bland and kind of boring because of the limited settings. But that's not what happens. I think he did a really good job making it still feel like it was fairly lively and utilizing camera angles and pans and zooms in a way to make these different homes, these different apartments, come to life in their own unique ways. And this is a film that also features a lot of heavy emotions, or, anger and grief and all that different types of passion. And I definitely feel that the direction really matches the energy of those scenes very well. So honestly, I was really impressed by the film's direction. I thought it was very dynamic, and I thought it was really good. The screenplay is by Peter Jarkovsky and Peter Vasabach, and it's a very bittersweet story because of what it's dealing with. It's dealing with not only coming of age, with some teenage characters throughout it, but it's also dealing with a time of political unrest and dealing with a moment in Czechoslovakian history when things, definitely got pretty tense. And this is a film, though, where it starts out in a way that's rather shocking, but it really is a good example of how you can start a film off in a pretty dark kind of way, but still manage to provide a film that isn't necessarily the same level of darkness in terms of the story. It's one of those kind of fake out kind of things because it starts out really with an attempted suicide by one of the characters when he tries to hang himself in a shed. And the majority of the film isn't really like that in terms of its tone. So it's an effective fake out moment where you're thinking, okay, it's going to be really dark and bleak and depressing, but that's not really the case. It's just more realistic than anything else in terms of the different dynamics and the different varying storylines throughout with all these different families, that live inside of this apartment complex. And there's a lot of different characters in this. There's the Sebex, and there's I believe the Maslans, and there's the Sebkovas, and the Krasovas, and there's all these different families that live inside of this apartment complex. And so you see their day-to-day lives. It's really a slice of life story, but instead of just getting one slice of life, you get multiple slices in the same story. There's stuff involving teen love. There's stuff involving different neighbors and their warring politics. There's stuff involving one of the parents and a divorce with her husband, and then her trying to find another mate, and she's a single mom, so she's trying to make that work as well the best as she can. And there's a lot of stuff about Western politics and how that's clashing with the Czech politics, and how some Czechoslovakians that can't stand the Western stuff to the point where they don't want their kids even listening to the Beatles or even doing any of this other stuff because they think that it's a Western thing. It's one of those films that I think there's a lot to the story, a lot to the plot, in terms of the underlying issues, the social commentary. But it's something that I would probably say that since I'm not from Czechoslovakia, I'm not really as familiar with that. So those particular elements didn't really do a whole lot for me when it comes to this story and this script. But I did notice there was a lot of that there. I just didn't understand the context. But I think if you understood the context, this would be an even more rewarding story. But even without that, I still think it's good because I think the screenplay by these two writers, they just do a spectacular and genuinely wonderful job making these characters feel very real and fleshing them out and giving them a lot of arcs and really making them feel like they're real people. And I just love the dynamic that the writers create between all these different families. And I like that it starts out, during the Christmas season. So you get to see a different a concept and vision of what it would be like for somebody else, in a different country, when it comes to how they celebrate Christmas. And you get to see a lot of similarities between the way that they, handle their relatives coming over and all the different drama that ensues with that around the holidays. And you can actually see that as, okay, they're just like us, over here in the USA, that we when our relatives come over, we got the drama too, and there's a lot of the young love stuff with some of the teens, and there's a lot of the other sort of underlying sort of issues and drama and the constant battles back and forth between people's politics and their certain views, and there's some families that are more laid back, that seem like they are a little bit more chill, and then there's some other families that are more strict and more militarized in the way that they handle things within the household, because the father was in the military, and so he handles things the same way. And I like that the script definitely has moments where it's quite critical of that, and it's also critical of other things in terms of the way other families are handling their kids, or handling a lot of the daily drama that ensues throughout the household. And of course, talking about the Bolsheviks and all of this other stuff, and the young youth really getting involved in what a lot of people consider to be kind of hippie culture, or really being invested in American cinema, and essentially bootlegging movies, black and white films that they just broadcast, not really broadcast, they play them on a sheet in the middle of the night on the side of a building. And I thought that was definitely quite a striking image, and it really shows how vastly different things were back then. That's not the kind of thing you would ever see walking down the street nowadays. Uh, but it's just a really unique, really heartfelt story as well, and it just handles a lot of the emotions that come with coming of age in such an effective way. And uh, I thought it was quite compelling and endearing at the same time. And yeah, I really liked the story, and a big part of why I liked the film so much is because of the strength of its screenplay. And I think the cast is also great. Michael Baron as Michelle, Andrzej Brosek as Elian, Miroslav Dontil as Mr. Sibek, Yaroslav Dusek as Sasa, Eva Holbova as the teacher. Because there's a lot of stuff going on with school as well, which is understandable because you have teens in the story. So there's a lot of coming of age elements here. And definitely want to point out Bolek Polifika, who was in another Czech film that I reviewed on the channel. I forgot exactly which one it was, but I thought he was a lot of fun in that movie, and he was a lot of fun in this too. Yeah, it's just a really good cast, a lot of great performances. Huri Kodet is Mr. Kraus, and it's got some really wonderful, gorgeous cinematography by Jan Malif. It's got some good editing by Vladimir Barak. And it's also got some good music by Ivan Halas and Ivan Krall in terms of the instrumentals. It really adds to the whole cozy feel and atmosphere of the film. And it also utilizes a lot of music, from the 60s in a rather inspired and good fashion as well. So, yeah, I thought this was a really good film. Now, the next film that I'm going to be talking about is Terkel in Trouble. And this one sucked. I did not like this movie. This was honestly a pretty painful watch. The animation, for one, looked very cheap and was not very easy on the eyes. It's some really crappy looking CGI. And then if that isn't bad enough, it's a gross out, try hard kind of animated comedy film that's trying way too hard to be offensive and gross, as if it's like the Danish version of the Ren and Stimpy adult party cartoon at times, or if it's trying to be a very lesser version of South Park. uh the film is directed by Kristen Vestjeberg Anderson, Thor Bjorn Christopherson, and Stefan Fidgelmark. I butchered all of their names, but they butchered this movie, so I mean it's only fitting. The direction is not very good. It's pretty bad actually, for an animated film. There's just a lot of sentiments exactly. Uh, because to be honest, I was pretty bored watching the movie too. But anyway, and the direction is pretty boring. It's a very flat looking film directing wise. It tries to do a few things that are a little bit more energetic or animated, no pun intended, but a lot of the time it just fails because I don't think these directors really know how to utilize the animation or the models properly. So it's a film directing wise that it looks cheap, it looks rushed, it looks like something you'd see like as a short on YouTube, but for some reason it's now like a feature length film, and it's pretty poor. I'm just gonna be honest here. And then the screenplay by Mete Hino is also pretty horrible. This is edgy comedy dealing with this kid named Terkel and his friend Jason, who carries around a pipe for some reason. Well, you find out the reason why, but it's only really for the convenience of the film script because otherwise it makes no sense for him to carry a pipe around. And Terkel and Jason, they get bullied by these two bullies, and there's this teacher who shows up who takes over and is now the new substitute teacher for their Danish class. And Terkel gets into some trouble with his family because his parents, Sheila and Leon, they wind up getting married. And then at the wedding reception, the two bullies essentially force Terkel into stealing beer for them. But then Terkel gets in trouble with his uncle, Stuart Stardust. And then the uncle, the drunk uncle, beats up the bullies. Then Stan and Saki uh, just relentlessly bully Terkel afterwards. And this is also a film that has a lot of cutaway gags, trying to be like South Park or Family Guy, and it just doesn't work at all. Like Terkel raps at one point, he's trying to do a diss track on the bullies, and it's just as cringe as it sounds. And there are a lot of attempts to just be very gross out, with pee jokes or with the whole thing where when Terkel's trying to speak to his parents because they're smokers, the entire kitchen is just full of cigarette smoke to the point where it's like a haze and you can barely see anything. There's a lot of the different ways that Terkel's and his friend handle things or hang out that are just kind of gross and dumb, or the stuff with the bullies and how they handle things. And it's also definitely trying to be a little more extreme when it comes to some of the violence, and also when it comes to some of the drug use and swearing. The kids swear like sailors and so on and so forth. That's where it definitely feels like it's trying to emulate South Park, but nowhere near as effectively. And you have this bit though that happens in the middle of the film that just completely brings everything to a screeching halt, because it's already bad enough that it's going the lazy route of having a fat girl just be relentlessly mocked and made fun of because she's fat, and it somehow gets even worse because these bullies, Stan and Saki, they keep bullying this girl named Fat Doris. Yeah, her name is even Fat. And she likes Terkel, so she wrote him a love letter. And then because Terkel is tired of getting bullied by these bullies, he doesn't defend Dorrit. Instead, because her name is actually Dorrit, but they call her Fat Doris. And he doesn't defend her, and instead he goes along with the bullies, which makes him into a total douchebag, just like the bullies are. And he says he would never love that fat cow. And so Dorrit gets so upset that she jumps out a window to her death. And the CGI model of this young girl jumps out a window, lands onto the asphalt below, and splatters into a bloody paste. My mouth was just dropped wide open during that scene. I could not believe what I was watching. Like, oh my fucking god. That is so tasteless. And it doesn't get that much better from there. But there are some moments when it has some references to like a slasher film or some horror movies, because I'm a horror fan. That's definitely something that kind of, piques my interest a little bit more. And it was kind of fun when it did decide to kind of go that route a little bit, but it didn't really do that enough. And instead it's just really relying a lot on the gross out humor or just trying to be really offensive and edgy. And then eventually the kids go on a school trip and they are driven there by the new substitute teacher. And of course, while this is all going on, Terkel is getting these death threats that are getting sent to him in the mail, or he's getting these messages that are popping up all over the place because, apparently somebody, it seems like they want to kill him for what happened to Dorrit. And not only does he have to deal with that and the paranoia, but now he has to deal with all this other stuff that's going on the field trip, because you find out that the substitute teacher, he's actually a psychopathic killer. He killed the other teacher, and he is just posing as the teacher so he could get all the kids on a field trip so then he could kill them later. And so I'm like, okay, that's the kind of warped, messed up kind of plot that I'm kind of into, to be honest. That would definitely add some suspense, and it's definitely a little bit unpredictable. I was not expecting it to really go into that particular territory. And you find out in a twist that Dorrit was actually the sister of Jason, Turkel's best friend, and Jason is the one that wanted revenge. But because they're friends, they hash it out, and they wind up forgiving each other just in time for Jason to beat the killer over the head with his pipe and save Terkel. And that's basically the story of Terkel in Trouble. Now, the film, for some reason, has a lot of narration. There's like one of the teachers, I think it's like the music teacher. He narrates the story, and he does it in a way that's just very boring and uneventful and uninteresting, and also trying to be funny but never really being funny. And it's just a really weird movie. It's a weird, awkward, off-putting story with off-putting characters, and it's just one of those stories that, other than maybe some of the suspense involving the teacher who's a serial killer, it doesn't have that interesting of a plot either. And it feels like there's barely even a plot to begin with. Like, things just barely hang together. And it's a comedy, but it's not funny. So it's a comedy, but it doesn't make you laugh. It just makes you roll your eyes or groan or be like ew, or like there's really not a lot of things in it that you're like, oh man, this is so funny. Maybe if you're Danish, maybe this is something that it was is really different, and funny, because it's so outlandish and offbeat, and you don't really see a lot of this kind of stuff. But in the United States, like, watching it as an American, like, there's just really not a lot about this that is that unique or stands out that much in comparison to a lot of the other, like, edgier, other adult comedies that exist that feature kids. But the voice cast is not much better either. Like, they're pretty bad. Anders Matheson, who voices Terkel, and a handful of other characters. It's the kind of voiceover that just sounds like adults who are trying to sound like they're kids, and it definitely is something that gets on your nerves, Kim Matheson also did some voiceover work. Pretty much it's just three people who do all the voices in the Danish version. Anders Matheson, Kim Matheson, and Anders Matheson. So just Anders and Kim Matheson just voiced everybody for the most part. And they did a pretty bad job. Like, it was pretty poor. And the animation, like I said, is awful. It's ugly to look at. It looks cheap. It's not good. The editing by Pierre Riziger, Mikael Ryland, Martin Wichman Anderson, it's so-so. The music by Bo Rasmussen is also pretty just average. And it's like 77 minutes, but it feels like it's way longer than that. Because there's no investment in the characters, you don't give a shit about them, and you don't care about the plot, for the most part, unless it throws a wrench in there with a serial killer. But other than that, like, it's very boring and not funny and gross and just not good. The next film, though, the final film that I'm going to discuss in this video is Gympl, which is also known as The Can. Came out in 2007. It's directed by Thomas Vorel. And I think Thomas's direction, it's not terrific, but it works fine. It's there. The reason why I don't think it's terrific is because for some reason he had a lot of the scenes set up in a way where either he utilized not enough camera angles, or he shot a lot of stuff in this weird fluorescent sort of lighting, or he utilized the camera in a way that just exposed a lot of the limitations of the camera that he was using. Like, visually, this film doesn't look good. It's got this kind of grimy look to it, and I think maybe, I don't know if that's by design or not, and I think when it comes to some scenes it works, like when the characters are going around spray painting things. Okay, that works. That's understandable. But there's other scenes that aren't like that, and it looks the same, and it's just, it's a little too grimy for what is essentially a film that mostly takes part in a high school. And the usage of pans and zooms is very rudimentary as well. But I will have to admit, like, the direction is at the very least okay. It's serviceable. But it's not very dynamic. It's not very interesting. And the script is by Tomas Hoska, Thomas Vorel, and Pavel Nosek. And this is just another coming-of-age teen comedy. And I use the comedy loosely because it's another one of those comedies that just isn't really that funny. The dialogue isn't that humorous. The attempts to try to be funny just don't really work for me. Maybe it's because I'm not Czech, so I don't get what they're trying to parody, or I don't get what they're trying to do with it. I don't get the comedy. Maybe that's it. It's kind of lost in translation. The characters, they're also just very average, very mid characters. Peter and Mikael, and some of the other friends of theirs, that go to the school, like Coleman, or which is Mikael. But Tomas, who's a teacher, or Carol, who's another teacher, or Clara, or Pavla. It's just one of those scripts where it's fairly generic in terms of a lot of the elements of the plot and a lot of the elements of the characters. They're just troubled teens going to high school and struggling with their studies, struggling with their place in life. And the one thing that is at all kind of interesting and different and unique is the fact that a couple of these teens are into spray painting things, doing spray paint art. But other than that, like, there's not much else there. It's just the same generic coming of age stuff with teenagers, struggling with their schoolwork or struggling to pass their classes, trying to keep their bad grades hidden from their parents, trying to stay on the straight and narrow, or at least try to make the attempt to it, or try to improve their school work or their school grades, but they just get too wrapped up in being teens and spray painting stuff and there's drama involving the multiple different teachers and how they get along with each other and how they handle the troubled teenagers. And of course the teens wind up getting in trouble with the law, so there's that too. And there's power dynamics that are going on between the teens parents. And one of the teens parents is actually a really well-known popular businessman, so he has a lot of leeway and a lot of clout in the town, so his son gets away with a lot of shit. And there's also a lot of romance, but the most romance you get is a really uncomfortable cringe romance between a teacher and his underage student. I mean, it was so cringe and so hard to watch. I literally had to fast forward through one scene because he basically had sex with an underage girl in his class. And this was like his last day at the school because he got caught with her earlier and it got him in trouble. And the way the character was written, he seemed like a nice guy. He was trying to get some of these teenagers, get them on the straight and narrow, have them use the spray painting to maybe inspire them to do better in school. But then they almost got caught by the cops one night. And then later on, he just kind of gives up and then just, I guess, gets infatuated, gets too horny, and, starts having sex with one of his students. It was just all kinds of fucked up and weird and just ick. Just ew. Gross. No. And like because of that really soured me on the story and on the film. But I wasn't super big on it to begin with because I just didn't really care about the plot. I didn't care about the characters that much, especially the two leads. Oh, cool, you're good at spray painting, but you guys are dicks. Like you're two fuck ups. Like you're not learning shit. You're not doing anything to change your ways. And by the end of the film, they don't do anything. There's no arc. They start the film one way as a bunch of spray painting hooligans, and then they end the film the same way with them running away from the cops. It just made everything just feel kind of pointless. Made the story feel pointless, and made the entirety of the film kind of feel pointless for the most part, other than seeing some cool looking spray painting art. The cast, I mean, they try. I mean, I don't think Thomas Vorel Jr. and, Zuzana Bidvoska and Yuri Madil, I don't think they're bad. Especially Thomas Vorel Jr. and Yuri Madil. Like, they're actually good. It's good. Their acting is pretty solid. I don't like their characters, but it's not their fault. Jan Cross is Coleman's father. He's fine. Is the angry dad. Eva Huobova is the headmistress. She's effectively bitchy is the headmistress. Essentially the principal. Thomas Matonona, who played the form teacher. He was good. I hated that he was a guy who was involved with a girl who was way younger than him. Like, it was like underage at his school. Like, that was just gross, but I'm not going to blame the actor. He just did what he was told. But when it comes to the other scenes where he's trying to inspire the students and he's trying to connect with them, he was actually good. He was like one of the only characters in the film I kind of cared about. I kind of got into, and then he's a creep who is a pedo. No. And there's this other guy who's a Czech teacher who played by Yuri Schmitzer. And he's just gruff. He's just a gruff old guy who just gets a very short temper, and very similar to the same performance you got by Jan Kraus. And then you've got, Lenko Yurskova, who was 16 years old at the time, by the way, which makes the scene even creepier. And she even admits that these scenes were not easy to shoot. Yeah, no shit. You're 16 and you're asked to strip down naked in a classroom and essentially perform as if you're having sex with an older man. Yeah, that's going to be uncomfortable. That's going to be weird. Well, not weird. It's going to be not easy. Like that's just messed up to me, man. Maybe it's just something where it's more acceptable back then in Czechoslovakia or something. I don't know, but that was just wrong to me. And the actress is actually really good, but she had one of the better performances in the film. But just damn, man. And then Thomas Vora also played a janitor in this, who thankfully is not a creepy perv janitor. Easily could have gone that route, considering what you get with a lot of this film and a lot of its script and its storyline. But yeah, overall, cast is not too bad. Probably one of the better aspects of the movie. Definitely something that is better than the overall script or the direction. And the cinematography is just nothing special by Marek Jika. The editing by Flip Issa and Thomas Vorel it's not terrible. It's not terrific though. The music though was interesting. It had a lot of music by different Czech rappers and some other, instrumental kind of synth stuff. And that's another kind of thing that I didn't mind about the film. To kind of, get a taste of, or, get an idea or an inkling of, what some of, the Czech music would have been like from around that time, in 2007. So it's a film that, in all honesty, I was a little disappointed by, because I really liked the movie starring Thomas and Yuri Model. The other movie that I watched starring those two, I think it was Snowboardici, the snowboarding movie. And so I was like, oh, those two, I like those two actors. So I was looking forward to seeing this because they're also starring in this, and it just wasn't as fun. It wasn't as engaging. It wasn't as interesting of a plot, and it was ultimately really creepy in the end, because you have this whole pervy undertone with it that just didn't really work for me. And then you have the whole thing where it just felt like it was pointless, because it seemed like it was a coming of age story about two teenagers who are, in a difficult part of their lives, and they're, in between, what they want to do and what, they think that they should not be doing. And, a lot of turmoil, teen turmoil, and trying to figure out, your place in life as a teen. And they just don't change at all as characters. And that's just boring. How can you have a coming of age story and there's no actual coming of age? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But anyway, yeah, that's my thoughts on 3 different foreign films. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.